When giants fall from the sky, Commander. Sarah Chen stared at the holographic display floating above her desk, her coffee growing cold as the impossible numbers stared back at her. The object was massive, larger than any asteroid humanity had ever tracked, and it was slowing down. That was the part that made her stomach clench with dread. Asteroids didn't slow down. Ships did. The Prometheus Deep Space Monitoring Station had detected the anomaly 3 days ago, but Sarah had hoped it was a sensor error. Now, as she watched the enhanced telescopic images stream across her screen, there was no denying what they were seeing. The object was artificial, its surface covered in geometric patterns that caught and reflected starlight in ways that hurt to look at directly. "Ma'am, we're getting more detailed scans now." Lieutenant Torres approached her desk, tablet in hand, and worry etched across his young face. "The object is approximately 8 kilometers long and 3 kilometers wide. The eye composition is unknown, but it's definitely manufactured." Sarah took the tablet and scrolled through the data. 8 kilometers. The largest human spacecraft ever built was barely 300 meters long. Whatever had built this thing operated on a scale that dwarfed human engineering. She looked up at Torres, seeing her own fears reflected in his eyes. "How long until it reaches Earth orbit?" she asked, though she already suspected the answer would be worse than she hoped. "At current deceleration rate, approximately 18 hours, ma'am." 18 hours. Sarah closed her eyes and took a deep breath. In less than a day, humanity would face its first confirmed contact with alien intelligence, and the visitors were arriving in something that looked more like a weapon than a diplomatic vessel. "Get me President Rodriguez on secure channels, and patch me through to Dr. Webb at the Xenobiology Institute. We're going to need his expertise." Across the globe, similar conversations were taking place in government bunkers and military command centers. The initial excitement of first contact had quickly given way to cold fear, as the scale of the approaching vessel became clear. This wasn't the peaceful meeting of civilizations that optimistic scientists had dreamed of. This was something else. Entirely. Dr. Marcus Webb received the call while reviewing theoretical first contact protocols in his Geneva office. He had spent 20 years preparing for this moment, writing papers on alien psychology and communication theory. None of his research had prepared him for the reality of an 8-kilometer warship approaching Earth. Within 6 hours, Webb found himself in the emergency command center beneath Geneva, surrounded by military officers and government officials from every major nation. The room hummed with tension and barely controlled panic as world leaders grappled with humanity's greatest challenge. President Elena Rodriguez stood at the head of the conference table, her usually perfect appearance showing signs of strain. She had been awake for 36 hours straight, coordinating with world leaders and military commanders as they prepared for the unknown. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice steady despite the circumstances, "we are facing an unprecedented situation. The vessel will reach Earth orbit in 12 hours. We need to be prepared for any scenario." General Harrison, head of the newly formed Earth Defense Coalition, spread tactical displays across the table. "Our orbital platforms are armed and ready, but honestly, against something that size, our weapons are like throwing rocks at a battleship. We need to assume this is either a diplomatic mission or we're already defeated." Dr. Webb cleared his ice throat nervously. "If I may, the size of their vessel could be cultural rather than military. Some species might simply build large out of necessity or preference. We shouldn't assume hostile intent." The room fell silent as everyone considered this possibility. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Lieutenant Torres appeared on the main screen, his face pale with shock. "Ma'am, the vessel is transmitting. We're receiving a message on multiple frequencies." The transmission that followed would be remembered as the moment humanity's innocence died. The voice that came through the speakers was clearly artificial, translated by some advanced system, but the message was unmistakably clear. "Inhabitants of the third planet, I am Admiral Kethvar of the Kithara Empire. Your world has been selected for integration into our domain. You have 72 hours to surrender your governments and submit to Kithara authority. Resistance will result in the complete sterilization of your planet. This is not a negotiation. This is an inevitability. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. Dr. Webb felt his theories about peaceful contact crumbling around him. President Rodriguez was the first to recover, her political instincts kicking in even in the face of extinction. General Harrison, what are our defensive capabilities? Harrison pulled up tactical displays showing Earth's orbital defenses and military assets. We have 12 orbital weapons platforms, each equipped with nuclear missiles and directed energy weapons. Our space-based fighter squadrons total approximately 300 craft. Against a single target, even one this large, we should be able to inflict significant damage. Captain Jake Morrison, one of Earth's most experienced fighter pilots, studied the tactical readouts with growing concern. He had flown combat missions against pirates and rogue nations, but nothing had prepared him for this scale of engagement. His experimental fighter, the Prometheus, was fast and heavily armed by human standards, but against an alien Dreadnought, it was a gnat facing a giant. What about evacuation protocols? Asked Dr. Webb. If we can't win, can we at least save some of our population? President Rodriguez shook her head grimly. Our fastest ships can barely reach Mars. There's nowhere to run that they couldn't follow. If we're going to survive this, we fight here and now. As the hours ticked by, humanity prepared for war with a desperation born of necessity. Every available pilot was briefed and assigned to combat squadrons. The orbital platforms were armed with everything from nuclear warheads to experimental plasma cannons. Scientists worked frantically to understand the alien vessel's capabilities. From long-range scans, Dr. Webb found himself studying not weapons data, but the psychological profile of their enemy. The Kythera transmission had been cold, efficient, and utterly without emotion. These weren't conquerors driven by passion or ideology. They were something far more dangerous. Pragmatists who saw humanity as a problem to be solved. They're treating it's like an infestation, he told Sarah Chen during a brief break in the preparations. To them, we're not even worthy of hatred. We're just in the way. Sarah nodded, checking her tactical displays for the 100th time that hour. Maybe that's their weakness. They don't understand us because they don't think we're worth understanding. As the deadline approached, Captain Morrison found himself in the cockpit of his fighter, part of the first wave that would engage the alien vessel. Around him, hundreds of other pilots prepared for what many believed would be humanity's last battle. The comm channels buzzed with nervous chatter and final messages to loved ones. All pilots, this is Admiral Chen. Sarah's voice crackled through their headsets. I know the odds look impossible. I know we're facing something beyond our experience. But remember this, they gave us 72 hours because they think we'll surrender. They think we'll kneel and beg for mercy. They don't understand that humans don't know how to quit. The alien vessel had taken position in high Earth orbit, its massive bulk casting shadows on the surface below. Long-range sensors detected smaller craft deploying from the Dreadnought, each one larger than humanity's biggest warships. The invasion was beginning. President Rodriguez addressed the world one final time from the emergency bunker. Billions of people watched as she stood before the cameras, her expression calm despite the chaos surrounding them. My fellow humans, she began, in the next few hours we will face our greatest test. An alien empire believes we will surrender our freedom, our dignity, our very existence without a fight. They have forgotten something important about humanity. We have never learned to bow to tyrants. Today we show the universe that Earth bows to no one. In space above, the first alien fighters began their descent toward the orbital platforms. Captain Morrison tightened his grip on the controls of the Prometheus and smiled grimly. The Kythera were about to learn their first lesson about humanity. Humans were full of surprises. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and despite the impossible odds, humanity was ready to fight. They might not win, but they would make sure the universe remembered that humans had faced extinction with defiance rather than submission. The Kythera Empire was about to discover that some species were worth more than they appeared, and that the greatest mistake a conqueror could make was underestimating those they sought to destroy. As the first shots of the war lit up the darkness of space, one thing became clear. This would not be the easy conquest the Kythera had expected. Humanity was about to show the galaxy why they had earned their place among the stars, one desperate battle at a time. When humans refused to kneel. The first exchange of fire between human and alien forces lasted exactly 17 seconds. In that brief span, humanity learned 3 crucial facts about their enemy. The Kythera's shields were nearly impenetrable. Their weapons could vaporize a fighter craft with a single shot, and they had absolutely no understanding of human tactics. Captain Jake Morrison pulled his fighter into a spiraling dive that should have been impossible at those speeds. His enhanced reflexes pushed to their absolute limits. Behind him, 2 Kythera interceptors struggled to match his erratic flight pattern. Their perfectly logical pursuit algorithms confused by maneuvers that defied conventional tactical doctrine. "Morrison, what the hell are you doing up there?" Admiral Chen's voice crackled through his comm system as she watched his fighter's impossible trajectory on her tactical display. "Something stupid, ma'am," Jake replied, his voice strained against the crushing G-forces as he pulled his fighter through another physics-defying turn. "And it's working." The truth was that Jake wasn't following any flight manual ever written. He was flying on pure instinct, reacting to threats with the kind of chaotic improvisation that had gotten him court-martialed twice and promoted 3 times. To the Kythera's precise tactical computers, his movements appeared random, unpredictable, and therefore impossible to counter effectively. Dr. Webb watched the battle unfold from the command center, his trained eye catching something. The military officers had missed. The alien formations were perfect, their movements coordinated with mechanical precision. Every maneuver was calculated for maximum efficiency. It was beautiful, logical, and completely vulnerable to chaos. "They're fighting like machines," he announced suddenly, causing the entire command staff to turn toward him. "Look at their formations, their tactical responses. Everything is calculated, predetermined. They can't adapt to genuine randomness." Admiral Chen studied the tactical displays with growing excitement. Human fighters were being destroyed, but not at the rate the Kythera had clearly expected. Every time a human pilot did something illogical, unexpected, or downright crazy, it disrupted the alien battle plans. "All fighters, new orders," she broadcast across all channels. "Forget everything you learned in flight school. I want you to be unpredictable. Use your instincts, not your training. Make them guess what you're going to do next." The effect was immediate and dramatic. Human fighters began executing maneuvers that violated every principle of space combat. Tactics. They flew in patterns that seemed random, attacked from impossible angles, and retreated when logic said they should advance. The Kythera forces, programmed for logical opposition, found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow the rules. Aboard the massive Dreadnought, Admiral Kethvar observed the battle with growing confusion. His tactical computers provided constant updates, but the human response patterns made no sense. According to every simulation his species had run, the primitive Earth vessels should have been eliminated within the first few minutes of engagement. Kethvar was a veteran of 100 conquests, each one following the same predictable pattern. Lesser species either surrendered immediately upon seeing Kythera power, or they fought with conventional tactics that could be easily countered. These humans were doing neither. "Status report," he commanded, his translated voice echoing through the Dreadnought's bridge. "Sir, we have eliminated approximately 30% of the enemy fighters, but our own losses are unexpected," his tactical officer reported, the translation software struggling with concepts of uncertainty. "The humans are employing tactics that do not match any known combat doctrine." Kethvar studied the battle data streaming across his displays. Human fighters were attacking his interceptors in groups, but not in standard formation. They moved like a school of fish, each individual reacting to threats and opportunities in ways that created an overall pattern that was impossible to predict or counter effectively. "Implement Combat Protocol 7, he ordered. "If they will not fight logically, we will simply overwhelm them with superior numbers." The Dreadnought began deploying wave after wave of fighters, each squadron perfectly coordinated and armed. with weapons that could destroy human craft with minimal effort. But as the alien reinforcements engaged the surviving human fighters, something unexpected happened. The humans began talking to each other. Captain Morrison found himself flying, alongside Lieutenant Sarah Park, a young pilot he had never met before today. Their fighters moved in perfect synchronization, not because they had trained together, but because they were constantly communicating, sharing information, and adapting their tactics in real time. "Incoming from your 6, Morrison," Park's voice came through his comm. "I'll take high, you take low. Copy that. Watch for the crossfire pattern they like to use." Already spotted it. Breaking left in 3, 2, 1. The Kythera interceptors pursuing them found themselves facing opponents who seemed to share a collective consciousness, anticipating each other's moves and covering each other's weaknesses with an efficiency that surpassed even their own coordination protocols. Dr. Webb watched this development with growing amazement. They're not just fighting as individuals anymore. They're forming spontaneous tactical partnerships, sharing information and coordinating attacks without any central command structure. Admiral Chen nodded, understanding dawning on her face. The Kythera fight like a single organism with perfect coordination. We fight like a pack of wolves, each individual capable of independent action but working together toward a common goal. The battle raged for hours, with losses mounting on both sides. But slowly, incredibly, the tide began to turn. The Kythera forces, despite their superior technology and numbers, found themselves struggling against an enemy that refused to be predictable. Every time they adapted to one human tactic, the fighters would switch to something completely different. Captain Morrison had been in the fight for 6 hours straight when his luck finally ran out. Kythera plasma bolt clipped his fighter's wing, sending him into an uncontrolled spin toward Earth's atmosphere. His ship was dying around him, systems failing one by one, but Jake Morrison was far from finished. "All fighters, this is Morrison. I'm going down, but I'm taking some of them with me." Instead of ejecting or trying to regain control, Morrison did something that no Kythera tactical computer could have predicted. He aimed his crippled fighter directly at the largest concentration of alien vessels and pushed his damaged engines to maximum power. "Morrison, what are you doing?" Admiral Chen's voice was sharp with concern. "Something they won't expect, ma'am. Something human." The damaged fighter accelerated toward the alien formation, not in a desperate attempt to ram them, but as a distraction. As the Kythera vessels moved to avoid the incoming wreck, Morrison's fighter exploded in a brilliant flash that temporarily blinded their sensors. In that moment of confusion, the remaining human fighters struck with coordinated precision, destroying a dozen alien craft in a matter of seconds. Morrison's sacrifice became a turning point in the battle. One by one, human pilots began using similar tactics, turning their deaths into strategic advantages that the Kythera couldn't counter. They had never encountered a species willing to do not just for victory, but for the chance to give their comrades a slight tactical edge. Admiral Kethavar stared at his tactical displays in something approaching wonder. His forces still outnumbered the humans significantly, but the battle was no longer proceeding according to any predictable pattern. These primitive creatures were fighting with a creativity and determination that his species had never encountered. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we are detecting unusual activity from the human orbital platforms. They appear to be singing." The Kythera had detected the human battle songs being broadcast across all frequencies. Pilots shared stories, sang old songs from their cultures, and spoke words of encouragement to comrades they had never met. The comm channels buzzed with human voices, creating a constant background of communication that the aliens found completely incomprehensible. Dr. Webb listened to the chatter and felt a surge of pride in his species. They're doing what humans have always done in desperate situations. They're refusing to face death alone. Every voice on those channels is telling the others that they're not fighting this battle by themselves. President Rodriguez, watching the battle from the emergency bunker, made a decision that would be remembered for generations. She opened a direct communication channel to the Kythera flagship. Admiral Kethvar, this is President Rodriguez of Earth. I have a message for you and your empire. The alien response came quickly, translated into perfect but emotionless English. You wish to surrender, this is wise. Transmit your terms. Rodriguez smiled grimly. We don't surrender, we don't kneel, we don't beg, but we do have something to offer you, a choice. Leave our system now, and we'll let you go with the knowledge that you tried to conquer a species that doesn't know how to quit. Stay, and we'll show you exactly how creative humans can be when we're fighting for our survival. There was a long pause before Kethvar responded. You cannot win. Our technology is superior. Our numbers are greater. Logic dictates your defeat. Admiral, Rodriguez replied, you've been fighting humans for hours now. Has anything we've done been logical? The silence that followed spoke volumes. Aboard the Dreadnought, Kethvar consulted with his tactical computers and strategic advisors. The data was clear. The humans could not win a conventional engagement. But nothing about this battle had been conventional. The Kythera had conquered dozens of worlds, but they had never faced a species quite like humanity. Other races fought to win or fought to survive. Humans fought because they refused to lose, regardless of the odds. They turned their weaknesses into strengths, their desperation into creativity, and their certain defeat into something resembling victory. As dawn broke over Earth, the Kythera Dreadnought began to withdraw from orbit. The battle was over, but not in the way anyone had expected. Humanity had not defeated the alien empire through superior firepower or advanced technology. They had simply convinced a logical species that conquering Earth would cost more than it was worth. The final transmission from Admiral Kethvar was, brief, your species is unpredictable. The Kythera Empire will find easier conquests elsewhere. In the aftermath, as rescue crews searched for survivors and the world began to process what had happened, Dr. Webb found himself back in his Geneva office, staring out at a sky that was still blue, still free. The theoretical first contact he had spent his career preparing for had turned into humanity's greatest trial, and somehow, impossibly, they had survived. Captain Morrison's fighter was recovered from Earth's upper atmosphere, its pilot unconscious but alive. His impossible survival became another chapter in the growing legend of humanity's first interstellar war. When asked how he had managed to survive what should have been certain death, Morrison simply shrugged and said, I did something they didn't expect. I got lucky. But Dr. Webb knew it wasn't luck. It was something far more powerful and far more human. The absolute refusal to accept defeat, even when defeat was the only logical outcome. The Kythera Empire had learned something that day about the strange species inhabiting the third planet from an unremarkable star. Humans, it turned out, were full of surprises. And in a universe governed by logic and predictability, being surprising was the greatest weapon of all.